Watertown Mayor Sarah Pierce is with us as City Council has a meeting tonight on Tuesday, September 1st. Second, I should say. The first was Labor Day, of course, and that means no meeting. So it is to a Tuesday. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
You haven't been at a meeting here, and this isn't a SWAT issue. It's to say that you weren't at the last meeting in which I want to ask you a question about some business that happened at the last meeting. You were away. But it is the meeting in which the resolution came back up to come off the table for the ethics matter against Cliff Only to either continue or not. It went 2-2, so it fell. It didn't move on. If you were there, how would you have voted on that? Would it have continued to move forward, or would you have dropped those not the investigation, but the process, the ethics process against Cliff Only?
I would have voted in favor to continue the process. I've said all along that I think it's important to bring the process to a conclusion. I think we have an ethics board for a reason. They recommended that we give this a look and that we hold a hearing. And I think by not bringing the process to a conclusion, you're basically telling the ethics board that, hey, your recommendation doesn't matter. And also, importantly, I think you're denying Councilmember Olney the opportunity to share his side of the story publicly. So had I been there, I would have voted in favor of the process continuing.
Doesn't mean that it goes away. It could come back up. A new resolution could come forward. Any talk of that happening?
Sure. It could come back up for discussion at a meeting. I'm not sure exactly where the other council members who were in support of seeing it move forward stand at this point. I do know that we're going to have a discussion with the firm that was overseeing the process about our options moving forward, because even if we still decide, if the consensus is to not move forward, there still needs to be action taken to close the process out, whether I believe it's through a resolution to rescind the previous resolution that said we were going to move forward with a hearing. So we'll see what happens with that.
Tonight there is a public hearing and then likely a vote on whether or not to allow cannabis dispensaries to happen, operate within the city of Watertown. First, to the public, you haven't heard too much from people.
I have not heard overwhelming feedback from the public either way on this. Maybe a couple of people have reached out to me, but compared to the discourse that was had in 2021, it's very different. There were a lot of people who were speaking out for and against allowing dispensaries in the city back in 2021. This time around, it's been kind of quiet, but we'll see what's said at tonight's public hearing.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think people are not as much?
I think maybe because they've been around the state, they've been around the community and neighboring communities for a couple years at least now. So I think maybe people have become more used to the idea. I think that might have something to do with it, but we'll see what the representation is at tonight's public hearing.
And then there will be a vote by council of whether or not to allow this to happen within the city. And the big thing that a lot of people talk about is the missing out on some tax revenue, right?
Sure.
Is it the reason to do something like this? It's just for a money grab?
I mean, I would say that certainly, I think if you're going to vote in favor of it, that could be one of the reasons that you support it. We have seen in other communities, it's not a ton of money by any means, but it is another source of income. So that could be one reason to support it. I think at this point, likely you will see it pass tonight, but we'll see what the public hearing brings and how the votes fall.
Of course, one of those votes will be yours. So
Sure.
How will you vote on that tonight?
At this point, I'm leaning toward voting in favor. I've seen how the other dispensaries operate in communities. We've done our outreach to other communities to see if there's been an uptick in criminal activity. There hasn't, and I think the thing that a couple things stand out to me is that these aren't your smoke shops that you see on the corner. People who own these types of businesses have to go through a very rigorous vetting process. So I think that's important to know. And the other side of the coin, I think for me is, and this is one of the things that I've kind of remembered from the last time when we had a public hearing, is if people choose to use this product, it's important to know that they can get it from a safe place, and that's, I think, what these dispensaries provide. Last time around, we heard from parents who came and they said, I don't want my children necessarily using these types of products, but if they're going to, at least I have a little bit of peace of mind that they could go to a place like this and not get a product from another establishment, a smoke shop or elsewhere that could be laced with something. So I think there's a safety factor too.
What changed your mind then? Are those things that
Those
changed
are a couple
your mind?
things, yeah, that changed my mind. Yeah, definitely, I would say.
And what about the people that will come tonight who represent organizations in the community to keep people from becoming addicted to or constantly using or becoming customers of that sort of product?
I think that's another factor that you have to weigh in this, and certainly I'll be listening at tonight's public hearing. That's just the way that I'm leaning at this point, is in voting in favor of it, but of course my mind is open until the actual vote's taken.
There was a recent decision here, I think it came out on Friday, in terms of having the what's called DSIP funding, Department of Defense grant, in which it's something the local YMCA got back, I think 2020 or 2021, $9 million. For the third time, I think it is, Watertown has applied for this funding, and the awardees have been announced. Watertown not on this list. And the money would have been used to help with the drinking water and kind of make it cleaner. So I guess, what is your reaction to not being on that list? Because it really is one of the largest chunks of money that the city can get so that the taxpayer doesn't have to pay for this mandated new system.
Exactly. I would say my reaction is that I'm disappointed. I thought that we would certainly have better odds this time around. As you mentioned, this isn't the first time that we've applied for this funding, and I think the focus of the funding is to support initiatives that support both the military and the civilian community, and I really can't think of anything, a better example of that than this, and something as essential as drinking water. So disappointed for sure. I know that we'll do our outreach again, as we have in past years when we haven't received the funding, to see, where did we go wrong, what could we have done better. I don't know if we'll apply for it again. We'll see. I would think that if it's offered again, we likely will, because this is such an expensive project and we'll take money from wherever we can get it. But overall, I think it's disappointing that we weren't awarded the funds.
Is the overall project still at, what, 60 million?
Around that, yes.
And it's because there are some byproducts within the water. But it also brings up the criticism, I think Councilmember Olney has said, that Watertown was in the position to having to do this project because it failed some water testing many quarters ago, more than a year ago, maybe 2 years. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it was a while ago. And since then, Watertown's testing has been fine. So you get one red flag, one hot test on something, but the rest of them have been okay, but Watertown is still being told you have to do this. Someone may look at that process and say, that's flawed.
Well, I mean, I think the sentiment up until now, at least, has been that you're not going to see the feds lessen the requirements for safe water, even if you're out of compliance for that period of time. But maybe our being denied this most recent grant, federal funding, makes a case for us to say, hey, if you're going to force us to spend all this money, construct this project, then you have to help us out in some way.
But any conversations of, hey, do we still have to do this?
It's been something that's been mentioned here and there in different work sessions, and nothing official, but we'll see if it comes up again. I mean, and maybe it is worth revisiting again. I don't foresee the Fed saying that you don't have to do this anymore, but anything can happen at this point, I guess.
Sure. Another ticket on here, just to explain to people, is one of the ordinances. You are going to change the budget. Well, the vote would come up for a budget to be changed, and adding $30 million worth of debt to pay for more of a water system, but it's the more of the sewer side of water. So Western Outfall Trunk Sewer, the WATS acronym. Explain what's going on here, because you're not going and spending $30 million tonight.
No. So for people who, we've talked about a number of times what the WATS is. That's that area, Mara Drive, Richards Drive, Butterfield Ave, that area that's prone to flooding when we have extreme rainfall events. We have talked throughout the years and have been moving forward with making improvements to the WATS. What we're going to be doing tonight is readopting the budget to include, I believe it's $29 million in funding that essentially will allow us to apply for grants that would help to cover those improvements in a phased-in approach. So we're not going out and spending that $29 million. What we're doing is we're putting that in the budget, so then it makes it easier for us to apply for funds to make that phased-in project happen.
And finally, one resolution on here for the evening is agreement with neighbors of Watertown. And there are some numbers within this resolution that I just wanted to ask you about. But it talks about improving the rental stock in the city of Watertown. And I believe that the resolution said something that there are like 175 properties inhabitable that would create about 225 units. So buildings with apartments in them. Sure. And if all of it were to be cleaned up and brought back to code and good to go, you'd have 225 more apartments in the city of Watertown. Those are just big numbers to me, to have so many that are not usable right now. Does that number shock you?
It is a big number, but I think if you drive around the city, you can see that there are a lot of properties that are rental properties with apartment units in them that are in disrepair. So I don't think it's a complete shock. This is something that our codes department has been working on, and a team at City Hall has been working on for the past year or so, is identifying these properties and basically just looking at different ways that we can address blight in the city. This is one of the ways that hopefully will take a step forward in that process. As you mentioned, tonight's resolution establishes a memorandum of understanding with neighbors of Watertown. They're going to be applying for, I believe it's $2.5 million in state funding that would be funneled to these properties to help make improvements to them and get them back into that housing stock.
And not sure probably how that program would work. First, you have to be awarded the money, I would imagine. And
right.
And then next step, you don't know about.
The next step, I don't know specifics. I know Neighbors has run programs like this before, I believe, but basically I would imagine that there's an application process for the property owners, and there's different criteria I know that was included in the resolution, and the guidelines from the state that the property owner would have to meet, and it would essentially just help get funds into the hands of those property owners so they could fix those properties up, more housing in the area, and hopefully less blight.
Mm-hmm. All right, meeting tonight is at 7 o'clock. That public hearing with the cannabis dispensary subject is at 7:15.
Correct.
So the meeting will pause for that, and people can talk about that here tonight. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you.